Hi, everybody, and welcome and thank you. I have the pleasure of introducing today the 4 winners of the Connect-a-Thon. And first, what I asked all of them to do is actually to share with you shortly what are they doing with data and actually explain what data is important for them and really demonstrate the power of data within their tool. First to the stage is John from Databricks. Can you join me, please? Thank you. Thank you. And John, what are you going to show us today?
I'm going to show us the joint work we did together and how fast we were able to use lots of data sources into the Databricks Cloud platform, which is what we're doing.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Please go ahead.
So I'm John. I work with Databricks on the business development side. I'll talk today about Spark and Databricks Cloud, which is a version of Spark that we are offering to our customers, and about the joint effort we did with the Informatica team, where we both work in the AWS world, but we both recognize also that making data available is one thing, using data is another thing, and there is a complementarity there, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So Spark, if you're not familiar with that, it's a compute engine that similar to MapReduce in Hadoop world, but does many different things like streaming, machine learning, graph, a lot of different things there. It's by far the most active open source project in big data, and in Apache now, altogether. Our team is a team that created Spark. That's the team that drives Spark. We do about 75% of the code into that. We still drive the roadmap for that and have most people. And we have this kind of end-to-end hosted services where people who want to use Spark can do that into our environment. And it has lots of nice ways to improve the productivity of what you're doing there with Spark. We beat by far, I mean, it's really powerful. We beat by far other technologies. And the fastest time to sort 100 terabytes was done by Yahoo last year with 2,100 machines. Takes 72 minutes on Spark. Running on Amazon, it takes 23 minutes with 200 machines. So lots of people going toward that, who are crunching bigger numbers, more data into that. Well, I manage a whole ecosystem, which we did with Spark. And so obviously, there's many, many ways to get Spark from many distributions. But lots of companies actually integrate with Spark one way or the other and certify that with us. And that's what we do. And so the part we're really going after, which is what people really want to do. So Spark has all the performance, can do all of that. But the question we have many times is more like customer says, OK, I have data, I have questions I want to answer, just like the previous presenter was explaining, how fast can I go there, and how fast can I use Spark for doing that? And in our world, we try to make that very, very fast, like 5 minutes to work with a cluster, 5 minutes to have like working environments based on notebooks, and then 5 minutes to set up data. And that's the part that we care about with Informatica, which is how can I make those 5 minutes to set up data easy for people. And so we work together on this idea of integrating things together. And Spark can read from lots of sources out of the box. I mean, it can read from Hadoop, obviously, HDFS, HBase, Cassandra, a lot of those sources. But what about Salesforce? What about Marketo? What about SAP? What about NetSuite? What about all of those sources that are very, very familiar to the enterprise world, but maybe not to things that are constrained to big data only? And so the idea was like, can we take advantage of all of what can be available on-prem and in the cloud from Informatica, have the secured way of doing that, and having our customers use that? And so that's what we're looking at. And so we built that connector together with the precious help from the Informatica team, Nicolas Padma. And what that ends up being into, if you think of a source, transformation, and target, the connector is a target. So you basically can select the connector, and then that's all there is to be done to work in our world. And that means that any source of information that you can have in Informatica Cloud becomes available immediately into our world without the user having to build anything out of that. And it has a lot of the nice features that come with that. Like you probably hear, lots of people, they want to work on private data. And so how do you mask data? How do you anonymize data sets? That's out of the box also into that platform, and that's very useful for us. How does that work? Very simply, you go into the Informatica Cloud, you run into the apps, you select the data synchronization part of that, and there is like a wizard that does that, where you define the source, the target, that's us, the filters, the mapping, and when you want this to run, immediately, or you're scheduling that. And what that does is that you define your source. In the example I'm going to show today, Salesforce, And then you define out of that the target, which is our own environment. And you define within that what mapping you want to do into the fields and how you want this to appear there and when you want this to run. And that's as simple as that. And that would give you something you can do with all of those data sets that are out of the box into that. So why does that matter for us? Because this is the Databricks Cloud environment. If I log into that, I mean, I can spin up clusters in a few minutes and run things. But we work with this idea of notebooks that are here. And so a notebook is a place where I can start writing code and getting the results of my queries in the same place and have that. But because I've done that end-to-end process with Informatica already, for the user, what happens is that data becomes available immediately into that world. Sorry about that. Just looks like we're disconnected with the Wi-Fi. So data becomes available immediately. And without me having anything to do, I have the full schema of the data and sample data sets coming into that world. I didn't do anything as a user, maybe as an IT person or maybe as a data scientist. I've been able to push data into my world without having to do anything out of that. And why would that matter? Because this is what I want to be able to do with that. I want to be able to start querying that. And so here's about 1 hour's work time of our team yesterday looking at that into what would I do with Salesforce data out of a base that is limited. So say, well, one thing you want to do is you want to look at the data set and see, hey, what can I do with that? So here's the schema of what I was looking at. And so basically, I'm typing commands, and I'm executing those commands in the same place, getting the results there. And so I say, well, this is the schema I have. There's like 524 records out of that. And it's curated. I mean, those are markdowns that people have been adding to explain that. And basically, once I scrub, I mean, basically, I'm looking at 478. And then here's kind of like a view of the titles. Here's the view of the states where all of those is. This is a database of leads in Salesforce. This is where they come from, and then versus. So this helps me understanding the data set, what I could be doing with that as a data analyst, data scientist. So these are the cities, these are the zip codes, these are the companies, these are the, and so on and so forth. And then we're looking into that oh, there's something interesting, the lead sources. And then we're looking at the conversion out of that, and we see, well, it's kind of like not great. Lots of people not contacted, and then we look at the conversion, it's not really great. That got our team thinking, well, what could we do with that? Let's try to do something more fun. So, hey, let's do some machine learning. Same data set, same ideas. Now I'm starting getting into same environment, but I'm doing other people in Python or in Scala in this case, I've started doing machine learning. And so what I do is that, hey, let's find some predictions out of that. Maybe with the state, I can predict the type or the lead source out of this thing. And again, I mean, same data set that I had in Salesforce, nothing crazy there. And so I'm entering that, and I'm modeling that, and I'm defining decision trees for training my model, running those different things. And eventually, I can start predicting and finding correlations, like California as a lead source usually ends up being like a lead that came on paper, or Alabama came as digital, Illinois came as referral, Hawaii came as paper, and so on and so forth. And so those feed, I mean, recommendation platform, those feed personalization platform, those are the kind of things that people want to do to understand more of what you can do with the data. And so our team was a bit fancy, and they say, hey, let's try to do something a bit more than that. So where they say, okay.
So they even went one more step?
Yeah, they say, let's do graph, and let's start doing something more fancy than that. And so they say, okay, let's look at the graph by city. And now we can start clustering and looking at how this works, and then understanding different type of correlations, different ideas. So behind that is a lot of the how you do that and the technology to do that. And obviously, our environment is for creating those kind of Spark-based projects. But basically, I would be able to show that to you today by hiding all of the things and say, well, this is a graph. I mean, the points, the central points are the cities, and around that are the companies and how they aggregate together. And now I can understand that batch of lead with a view that is way more interesting out of that, and I can query that in multiple different ways and look at that. And so if you really think about the end-to-end, for us, I mean, we know how to build that. Our users know how to build those kind of things. But we made that very, very simple in the sense that I can get the Salesforce data, but I could get, as the previous presenter was saying, I could get my Salesforce and my Marketo and maybe my accounting data in the same time. Now I can build something more interesting. Maybe I can find an outlier. Maybe I can find better clusterings. Maybe I can find patterns. Maybe I can find predictions. Maybe I can be in a prescription mode. So all of that into just one place. And the few clicks out of the box into the connector that makes like what we want, which is the user experience on Spark very, very simple, and how far you can go with that in a very, very simple and nifty way, nothing to do there. In that world, I mean, I created a cluster for myself in 5 minutes, and then I was able to connect data in a few minutes. And those are my Salesforce data. And so core data for the company, I could get my SAP data in the same way. And then I start cranking and finding things or not, or working, and sharing that with you in a collaborative way, or sharing that with an executive in the company, and pushing all of that toward one of the platforms that would be out there, like a Tableau or any kind of platform for larger consumption by many other people. And so I could also invoke a lot of those things from another platform that could be delegating the computation of all of that to Spark and to that environment, and that this is the way it would happen, and the result would be fed. So think about that as a compute engine, and how easy it is as someone who would be interacting with data to bring data into that and then start working with that and getting results. There you go.
Excellent, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you, John, on the behalf of all the audience for the demo, and to show us how much stuff you can do with data, especially if you can get the data from the real sources. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks a lot.